Good afternoon. Since 1926, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, or known as the SAT, has been make or break for every high school student looking to get into college. Then, during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, college became more flexible about the SAT, as well as their acceptance rate. First off, I would like to say that I think the SAT should be made optional for high school students. Testing often fails to provide an accurate representation of students' academic potential and can worsen already existing differences in education. The SAT is a high stakes, standardized test that puts students under excessive stress and frequently prioritizes test taking strategies over actual thinking skills. Additionally, kids that come from an unprivileged backgrounds cannot have access to the tools needed to prepare for tests, which could result in differences in scores and don't accurately represent their ability. Making the SAT optional would enable institutions to evaluate candidates more comprehensively, considering a wide range of extracurricular activities, academic accomplishments, and personal traits. This would enable more inclusive and equal admissions process. First, I would like to start with my first question. Will the SAT become more test optional, and how is this impacting college admissions? Aaron Ehrenhart explains how highly educated students were affected the wrong way by the SAT, which led to the denial of the elite schools. It was humbling. I worked hard throughout all my years in high school, and then one test will determine if I'm good enough for a school. I feel like that's kind of unfair, Ehrenhart's climate. Cabria Arensko. Ehrenhart concludes with a change in terms and how admissions decisions are being made. She goes on to say, test optional and test blind admissions had begun to gain steam before the pandemic, with proponents arguing that test hurts the odds of applicants who have traditionally not done as well on them. Earnhardt adds on with how the pandemic affected college admissions. She says, but when the pandemic made it difficult to safely administrate those tests, the test optional way became a tsunami. Nearly every college freshman in the country today, and nearly every high school senior who hopes to start next fall, was able to apply without submitting an SAT score. This shows how impactful COVID-19 on the SAT testing was. The pandemic led to a widespread cancellation of SAT testing, as many testing centers closed due to the outbreak of and as well as the SAT sessions outright canceled, which disrupted plans of students who had been prepared for their tests that had specific dates. The College Board announced plans to develop an at-home version, but ultimately backfired due to the technical and security challenges. As an in-person test during the pandemic was daunting, which led to the discussion about making the SAT shorter or adapting it to better fit new learning, but those changes were lately overshadowed by the broader impact of the pandemic, which would allow incoming freshmen of the falls of 2020 and 21 to be SAT test free. By 2021, nearly all Ivy League schools and top tier universities, and a large number of other colleges and universities, to adapt test optional policies. This was a major shift as the SAT had previously been a central component of the college admissions for many schools. As the test optional policies were extended through the 2022 and 2023 admissions, some institutions even made test optional policies permanent. My next question is that the SAT still needed? What are the effects of not taking the SAT? Dana Smith explains in her article why the SAT influences high school students. Another and perhaps bigger reason is the belief that making submissions of the SAT or ACT scores optional is fairer and more equitable for students that come from a less advantaged background. Smith explains the differences between the high income families and the low income families. Data shows that the students from high income families on average score higher than those who come from lower income families. One third of children of very rich families score 1300 or higher on the SAT, while students less than 5% of the middle class students did, out of the impossible 1600, score less than an 1100, according to the study. Really few children in the poorest families scored lower than a 900 on the test. Students that come from a low-income background may struggle. More higher-income students and lower-income students often have limited access to test preparation services, such as courses, tutoring, and private coaching. They might lack study materials such as computers and internet practice, as well as a lack of guidance from parents or mentors who can help them navigate the test taking process. Low income students might face the pressure to perform well on standardized testing, like the SAT, and can be more intense for them, particularly because the exams are often seen as a primary factor for college admissions. Students that come from a higher income background may see a difference since they have more access to a variety of test preparation resources. High income students are often less stressed about the cost of applying to college or taking the SAT. They might also have parents who are more familiar with the college admissions process. They often have an easier time gaining admissions to top tier universities such as Ivy League schools like MIT, Duke, etc., and not just because of their high SAT scores, but because they are more likely to attend a high performing school with rigorous academics. My final question is, what is the future of the SAT testing? Shelley Cashin explains why colleges should ditch the SAT permanently. At a time when many colleges aspirants could not travel to testing sites, nearly three-quarters of colleges and universities, including Harvard and many other top-ranked schools, made the SAT and ACT more optional in 2022. More than a million students apply to college annually through the Common Application, which enables students to submit single applications to multiple schools. In 2020 and 2021, admission cycles, less than half students who applied through the Common App submitted an SAT or an ACT score. Since COVID-19, universities have adopted test optional admissions policies, as this trend accelerated the conversation about the necessities of the SAT in admissions. Schools have gone test optional and report their admissions process has become better. Since colleges have made the SAT optional or eliminated it entirely, have not seen significant decreases. In conclusion, allowing high school students to take the SAT optional is a step in the direction of more thorough and the equal college admissions process. Standardized exams like the SAT are impactful by variety, including economic standing, test anxiety, and availability to test preparation materials. They frequently do not fairly represent the student's entire potential or talents. Colleges and institutions can consider a wider range of factors like high school GPA, extracurricular activity, essays, and reference letters that more correctly reflect the student's ability and potential for success. By making the SAT optional, this change would encourage a more detailed assessment of prospects and lower the pressure on students to perform well in single testing. I hope you all understand how important the SAT is, and